My in-laws told my kids that I was too poor to buy them gifts and that their dad should have married someone successful. I heard everything through the door and cried silently. But on Christmas morning, when a limo pulled up and my kids opened gifts with my company's logo on them, their grandparents finally realized who they underestimated. My name is Emily Carter, and I'm 36 years old. I live just outside of Portland, Oregon, with my husband, Ryan, and our 2 kids, Lily and Jake, ages 7 and 9. From the outside, we probably looked like your typical middle-class family, living in a modest home, sending the kids to public school, and driving the same minivan we've had since Lily was born. But what no one knew, not even my in-laws, was that I was quietly building something massive behind the scenes. While they saw a stay-at-home mom in yoga pants, baking cookies, and picking up kids from soccer practice, I was also the founder and CEO of a startup that had just landed a game-changing deal. Still, that didn't stop Ryan's parents from judging me. They always had. From the moment Ryan introduced me as his girlfriend, his mom, Margaret, made it clear I wasn't the kind of girl he was supposed to marry. I didn't come from money, I didn't go to an Ivy League school, and I didn't have a fancy family name. I came from a small town in Idaho, where my parents owned a diner. I put myself through community college, then transferred to a state university. But Ryan loved me. He loved my grit, my passion, my dreams. He married me anyway. Over the years, I'd learned to tune out Margaret's snide comments and his father Gerald's cold indifference. I didn't need their approval. I had my own goals, and I wasn't going to shrink myself to fit their image of what a worthy wife should look like. Then came that Christmas. We had invited Ryan's parents to stay over for the holidays. They had a huge house in Seattle, but they wanted to spend time with the grandkids. I agreed, even though I had a bad feeling about it. I was preparing hot cocoa in the kitchen when I noticed they had taken the kids aside in the living room. I was about to walk in when I heard Margaret's voice, low but sharp. "You know, sweethearts," she said, "your mommy tries her best, but sometimes people just don't have what it takes. Your daddy could have married someone successful, someone who could have bought you real gifts. Not these little homemade things." Jake asked, "You mean the wooden puzzles mommy made for us?" "Yes," Margaret said with a patronizing laugh. "They're sweet. But don't you ever wish Santa brought you something from a real store?" I froze. My heart twisted in my chest. I didn't want to barge in and make a scene in front of my children, so I stood behind the kitchen door, tears silently streaming down my face. What they didn't know was that while they were mocking me for being too poor to buy gifts, I had just signed a deal with a national retailer to distribute my educational toy line, Bright Minds, across 200 stores nationwide. I had poured years into designing those puzzles, those games, and those interactive kits. I believed in giving kids tools to build their imagination, not just flashy plastic junk. But to them, I was still the poor girl who married up. That night, I didn't say a word. I tucked the kids into bed, wiped my eyes, and got to work. Because what they also didn't know was that Christmas morning was going to change everything. The next day, I called in a favor from a friend. We'd been planning a soft launch for Bright Minds, and I had a few prototype gift sets already boxed up with custom wrapping. I had the delivery rerouted to our house, with a little something extra. I didn't tell Ryan. He would have insisted on confronting his parents, and I didn't want a fight. I wanted a reveal. And so, on Christmas morning, with snow gently falling and a quiet anticipation in the air, I waited. At 8:03 a.m., a sleek black limousine pulled up to our driveway. Margaret, who had just finished commenting on how quaint our decorations looked, peered out the window and gasped. "Is someone lost?" she asked, already annoyed. The driver stepped out in a crisp suit, opened the back door, and began unloading brightly wrapped boxes, each stamped with a clean, bold logo, Bright Minds Inc. Jake and Lily's eyes lit up. They ran to the door, yelling, "Mom! Look! It says Bright Minds. That's your company, right?" Margaret's face paled. I stepped forward, finally letting myself smile. "Merry Christmas," I said softly. I thought the kids deserved something a little more official. Lily opened her box first. Inside was a high-tech STEM learning kit with interactive tools, digital access codes, and a personalized message card. Jake got a solar-powered robotics set. Each item was branded, professional, and expensive. Margaret turned to Ryan. "You never told us Emily's business was this." I looked her straight in the eye. "You never asked." But that was only the beginning. Margaret's eyes flickered as she tried to mask her surprise with a tight smile. Gerald didn't say a word. He just stood stiffly, arms crossed, as Lily and Jake tore through the luxurious packaging, gasping with excitement at the gadgets, colorful manuals, and videos customized just for them. I watched in silence, savoring the way their little faces lit up, not because the gifts were expensive, but because they were theirs. I had designed every detail with my children in mind. Their names were printed on each instruction booklet. There were even voice messages I'd pre-recorded that played when they powered up the devices for the first time. Ryan looked at me across the room, stunned. He mouthed, "When did you do all this?" I just winked. He had supported me through every late night, every pitch meeting, every failed prototype. He deserved this moment, too. Margaret finally spoke. "So, this company, it's yours?" I nodded. "Bright Minds is mine. I started it in our garage 3 years ago. We just closed a distribution deal. These kits will be in stores across the country in January." She let out a nervous laugh. I just thought you were still doing that little craft hobby." "It stopped being a hobby when I built a team, hired employees, and filed for patents," I said, calmly. "I just chose not to talk about it every 5 seconds." Gerald narrowed his eyes. "Then why are you still living like this? If you have all this money, why not move? Upgrade? Get a better car?" The sting of his words didn't surprise me anymore, but they still hurt. I clenched my jaw and forced myself to stay composed. "Because I wasn't building this company to impress you. I was building it for my kids. And for myself. We didn't need a mansion to prove our worth. We needed values. Patience. Grit." He scoffed and mumbled something under his breath about people who act humble just to brag later. But I wasn't done. Just then, Lily picked up an envelope from inside one of the boxes. "Mommy, there's a letter." She handed it to me, and I opened it slowly. Inside was the confirmation from our investors. The valuation of Bright Minds had officially crossed $14.6 million after our last funding round. I showed it to Ryan first. His jaw dropped. "Emily, oh my God." Margaret leaned over his shoulder to read it and suddenly staggered backward like someone had pulled the rug from under her. You're a millionaire?" she whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The numbers spoke for themselves. But just as the shock began to settle, something else happened that no one expected. The front door creaked open again, and in walked Melissa, Ryan's ex-fiancée. Margaret's face lit up like Christmas lights. "Melissa, what a surprise. We weren't expecting." "I was invited," she said with a smirk, stepping inside in her designer heels, her perfectly polished coat trailing behind her. I turned slowly. I hadn't seen Melissa in nearly 10 years. She glanced around the room, eyes darting to the gifts, the limo parked outside, then back to me. "Wow. Looks like things have changed." Margaret beamed. "Melissa's working in finance now. She's a wealth advisor for celebrities." I raised an eyebrow. "Good for her." Then Melissa walked right up to me, folded her arms, and said, "But the question is, how long can you really keep up this little miracle run?" The room fell silent. I tilted my head. "Excuse me? I know startups. Most crash in the first 5 years. High valuation doesn't mean profit. You could still fall flat next year and be right back where you started. I just want Ryan and the kids to be protected if that happens." Ryan stepped forward, angry now. "Melissa, that's enough." But I cut him off. No. Let her talk. This is entertaining." Melissa laughed, not expecting my calm. "All I'm saying is, wealth isn't just about having money. It's about managing it, preserving it, and being born into the right network." And just like that, the real reason she was here revealed itself. She didn't come to wish us Merry Christmas. She came to stake her claim. Margaret must have invited her, hoping to show me up. I smiled. "Melissa, that's cute. But you're right, I wasn't born into the right network. So I built one. And I've already hired an advisory team, including a risk management officer who was CFO of a Fortune 500 company." Her face twitched. "And since you're here," I added, pulling out a sleek binder from beneath the tree, "maybe you'd like to see our Q4 projections. Or the letter of intent from an educational tech company looking to acquire us for $30 million. Ryan's eyes widened. "You didn't tell me that." "I wanted it to be a Christmas surprise," I said, turning toward him with a soft smile. Margaret sank into the couch, completely silent now. Melissa glanced at her, then back at me, and finally said, "Well, looks like you've got it all figured out." I didn't respond. Because I didn't need to. But just as I thought the drama was over, Lily asked the question that shattered the last piece of calm. "Grandma? Why did you tell us Mommy was too poor to buy gifts?" Ryan turned sharply. "What did she say?" Margaret looked like she'd swallowed glass. Honey, I didn't mean it like that. But it was too late. The truth was out. Jake stepped in. You said Daddy should have married someone better. That Mommy's toys weren't real presents. The air in the room turned cold. Ryan turned to his mother, hurt in his eyes. Is that what you've been telling them behind our backs? Margaret stood, flustered. It was just a conversation. They misunderstood. No, I said, gently. They understood perfectly. Margaret's face had lost all color. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her purse, clearly looking for an escape route. But there was nowhere to run, not from the truth, not from her own words. Ryan looked devastated. You sat in our home, ate our food, watched our children, and you poisoned them against their own mother? She tried to backtrack. I only said those things because I was worried. I thought Emily was wasting your potential. I didn't mean to. Oh, stop, I said, my voice sharper now. You meant every word. Every little whisper in the hallway, every passive-aggressive comment at dinner, every time you accidentally sent me a job listing for housekeeping. You've always seen me as less. Melissa watched the chaos unfold like she was at a live soap opera. But even she looked uncomfortable now. Margaret turned to her for support. Melissa, you know what I meant, right? I just want what's best for the kids. Melissa shrugged. Honestly? I think Emily might be the most impressive person in this room. That was the last thing Margaret expected to hear. But before anyone could respond, my phone buzzed. I picked it up, confused. It was a video call request from our marketing director. I answered it quietly, stepping away from the group. On the screen appeared a woman from a major national morning show. She smiled brightly. Hi Emily. Sorry to interrupt your holiday, but we just got confirmation. We're featuring Bright Minds on Good Morning America next week. You'll be live in studio. Huge audience. Congratulations. I froze for a second, processing the words. The moment hit me like a wave. Then I turned the phone to show everyone. Margaret gasped. You're going on television? Melissa's jaw dropped. That's huge. Jake and Lily started jumping and squealing. Mommy's going to be on TV. Ryan looked proud beyond words. But then, just as I ended the call, another bombshell dropped, this time from Gerald. He cleared his throat and said, well, maybe now's a good time to talk about that loan we mentioned. I stared at him. Excuse me? Margaret suddenly perked up. Yes. Gerald was thinking of investing in some property and, well, we thought since you're doing so well. I blinked. You spent years undermining me, called me poor, told your grandchildren I wasn't enough, and now that you see a dollar sign, you want to borrow money from me? Gerald frowned. We're family. I gave a dry laugh. Funny how I became family the moment my company made headlines. Ryan stood by my side. You don't owe them anything, Em. I looked at Gerald. Tell you what. You can apply for one of the education grants we're offering through our foundation, for underprivileged adults trying to start over. The room fell into stunned silence. Gerald flushed a deep red. You're mocking me. No. I'm offering you the same compassion you never showed me. Take it or leave it. But just when I thought that was the final straw, another twist came crashing down, this time from my own daughter. Lily tugged on my sleeve and whispered, Mommy, can I tell you something? I knelt beside her. Of course. She looked over her shoulder to make sure no one else was listening. Grandma told me not to tell Daddy, but, last time she visited, she made us hide the drawings we made for you. She said they were too ugly to keep. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Ryan overheard. What? Margaret's mouth fell open. That is not true. But Lily looked at her and said quietly, you said Mommy wasn't special, but she is. She made me feel special. Every day. Margaret couldn't deny a child's truth. She stammered, then sat back down, defeated. I wrapped my arms around Lily, holding her tightly. I love your drawings, sweetheart. Every single one. Then Jake ran into the hallway and came back with a stack of papers he had hidden in his backpack. All the drawings. Crumpled, folded, but still beautiful. He handed them to me one by one, and with every colorful page, the bitterness in the room melted a little more. Melissa, still lingering, looked at me and said, you know, when I lost Ryan to you, I was bitter. I thought I had the better life because of the money, the job, the status. But watching this? Watching what you built, who you are, I get it now. He made the right choice. It was maybe the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. Then she turned to Ryan and added, you two ever consider expanding your company into financial literacy for kids? I've got contacts. We should talk. I looked at her, surprised. Are you offering to help me? Melissa smiled. I'm offering to work for you. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Melissa, the woman who used to take every chance to belittle me, now wanted to work for me. It felt surreal. But it also felt like power. Not the kind that shouts or shows off. The quiet kind. The kind that speaks when you don't have to prove anything anymore. I studied her face for a moment. She looked genuine. Maybe for the first time in years. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no either. I just gave a small nod, tucking the idea in the back of my mind. Margaret, meanwhile, looked like the air had been sucked from her lungs. She was watching the empire she thought she controlled quietly crumble around her. But then, a final twist came crashing in. The front door opened again. Ryan's cousin Amy stepped in, panting, snow on her coat. "Sorry I'm late," she called out. "Traffic was crazy." I smiled. "No worries. You're just in time." Amy walked into the living room, paused, and looked around at everyone. "Whoa. Did I miss something major?" Margaret narrowed her eyes. "You didn't tell her?" Amy looked confused. "Tell me what?" Ryan turned toward me, and his voice was a little hesitant. "Amy, can you tell Emily what you told me 2 weeks ago?" Amy blinked, then laughed nervously. "You mean about the company you're investing in?" He nodded. She turned to me and said, "Well, surprise. One of the firms I consult for was this close to trying to acquire Bright Minds. They were going to offer a pretty generous buyout." I was stunned. "What?" Amy chuckled. "Yeah. I didn't know it was your company at the time. I only realized a few days ago when I saw your name on the founder bio. You've built something seriously valuable." Margaret's eyes widened. "You mean, other people want to buy her business?" Amy raised an eyebrow. "Margaret, her company is worth 7 figures, maybe more. If you guys were still treating her like she was poor, that's on you. She's running circles around most of the CEOs I know." Margaret opened her mouth, then closed it again. She had nothing left to say. Ryan took my hand in his. "I've always believed in you. But now the world does too." As I stood there, holding my kids' crumpled drawings, my husband beside me, and my in-laws finally silent, not because they were being polite but because they had nothing left to say, I realized something. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to yell or throw insults back. My success was loud enough. But there was one more twist waiting for me before the night ended. After dinner, as the kids played in the living room and the adults pretended not to walk on eggshells, I stepped outside to grab something from the limo. The driver handed me an envelope. "Special delivery, ma'am," he said with a knowing smile. I opened it. Inside was a letter. From my father. I hadn't seen him in over a decade. The note was simple. "Emily, I saw the news. I'm proud of you. I know I never gave you anything growing up, but I hope this check helps make up for it. Use it however you want. Merry Christmas." And attached was a cashier's check for $50,000. I stared at it, stunned. Then I tucked it into my coat and walked back inside, thinking about how life had come full circle. And just when I thought the night couldn't be more emotional, I heard Lily call out, "Mommy, come quick. Santa left one more thing." I rushed in. She held up a small wrapped box. My name was on it. Inside was a necklace. One I recognized instantly. It was the same necklace I had tried to buy for myself 5 years ago, the one I put back because I couldn't afford it. Ryan had remembered. There was a note tucked underneath. "You've always been the gift, Em. The world just needed time to catch up." My eyes welled up. I looked around at my family, at the ones who believed in me and even the ones who hadn't. And I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. Real peace. But before I could bask in it too long, Jake ran up, eyes wide. "Mommy. Grandma's on the phone in the kitchen. She's crying." I blinked. "Which grandma?" He whispered, "Your mom." I hadn't heard from my mother in years. Our relationship had withered away after I chose to stay with Ryan. She had warned me that his family was toxic, that I deserved better. I thought she was being dramatic. Turns out, she'd seen what I was too blind to notice. I walked slowly into the kitchen, heart pounding. My hand trembled as I picked up the phone. "Hello?" Her voice was shaky. "Emily? Is it really you?" My throat tightened. "Yeah, it's me." There was silence for a beat, then a sniffle. "I saw the news online. I saw the article about Bright Minds. That's your company, right?" I swallowed hard. "Yes. It is." "I didn't know," she whispered. "I always knew you had it in you, but I didn't know you'd go this far. I'm so sorry for the way we left things. And I'm so proud of you." I didn't expect to cry. Not then. Not after everything. But I did. quietly, in that cold kitchen while the warmth of Christmas laughter echoed in the background. We talked for a while. And then she asked, hesitantly, Can I come visit sometime? I'd love to meet the kids. I wanted to say yes instantly, but I paused. Because suddenly, I remembered something. A few days before Christmas, Ryan's parents had been unusually nice. Margaret had even called me sweetheart. At the time, I thought it was just holiday pressure. But something didn't sit right. After I hung up with my mom, I returned to the living room, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I went into the study and pulled out our family iPad, the one our kids mostly used. But I knew Ryan's mom had borrowed it earlier that week, saying she needed to check some recipes. Something about that didn't add up. I checked the browsing history. My stomach dropped. She had been researching me. Searching for Brightmind CEO and even how to get money from a family business you don't own. My blood ran cold. I wasn't imagining it. Their sudden kindness hadn't come from change. It had come from greed. I printed the search history quietly and slipped it into an envelope. Later that night, after everyone was in pajamas and the house had grown quiet, I approached Margaret in the hallway. She looked up, surprised to see me alone. Is everything all right, dear? I handed her the envelope. I just thought you should know I'm aware of what you've been looking for. She opened it and paled. I won't tolerate manipulation, I said calmly. You're the kids' grandparents, and I want them to have you in their lives, but only if it's genuine. Margaret stammered, Emily, I was just curious. I don't care if you were curious or calculating. Just know that from now on, I see everything. And I'm not the scared little girl you used to push around. She looked like she'd been slapped. I walked away. But the biggest twist came the next morning. There was a letter waiting at our front door, hand-delivered in a thick cream envelope with an official seal. I opened it, confused. Inside was a formal offer from a prestigious private school in New York. They had seen our company's educational tech featured in Forbes and wanted to partner, not just by using our tools but by offering my kids full scholarships. It felt like the universe was rewarding every tear I'd cried, every night I stayed up building my business from scratch with babies asleep beside me. I shared the news with Ryan first, who hugged me tightly, pride shining in his eyes. Then we gathered the kids. I knelt in front of them. Do you remember how Grandma and Grandpa once told you I couldn't afford gifts? They nodded. Well, that's not true. And now, your future just got even brighter. You've both been offered a spot at a school that believes in